Hello, I'm Haseeb Kamran, and today I'm going to present a journal paper which is titled A Roadmap to Achieve the Global Methane Pledge. And as you can see, this is a list of all the authors, and the journal name is Environmental Research Climate. So the course for this presentation is Energy and Environment, and the instructor is Dr. Amin Itminan. So this is the outline of the presentation. So first I'm going to talk about why the authors have selected this particular topic for their journal paper. And then I'm going to talk about the global context and significance of the journal paper, and then the novelty of the paper, that how it is unique, right? And then I'm going to discuss the data sources and the collection, and furthermore, I'll talk about the reliability and the validity of this data that is discussed in the research paper, and then I'll talk about the real world implications of the research paper, and at the end I'll talk about the conclusions. So the authors were motivated to explore Global Methane Pledge (GMP), which was originally launched in 2021, which is supported by 149 countries and the European Union. So the function of GMP is to cut down methane emissions by 30% by the end of 2030. So while most of the countries, like 86% of the countries, are committed to this pledge, but the GMP lacks to address like which country is doing what, like how are they actually decreasing the methane emissions. So the authors analyzed 476 actions in 168 different country plans, and they found out that if every country is doing everything, is doing like what GMP tells them, so they can potentially decrease the methane emissions by 31%. So the authors suggest that this is not actually enough, and we need to have some other backup plans, and we have to address some missed opportunities so that the methane reduction can be further increased. When we talk about the global context and significance of GMP, so GMP lacks the specifics on how the country and the methane emitting sectors will actually contribute to the 30% reduction of the methane emissions. So, and naturally determined contributions (NDCs), these are actually country plans, and the authors found out that 86% of the countries actually include methane emissions in their NDCs. But when they studied 476 methane focused mitigation actions within the 168 NDCs, so they found out that only 40% of the total global emissions were actually listed in the NDCs. So that brings us to the insufficiency of current NDCs. So they found out that even if the countries are doing everything in their power to reduce the methane emissions, so they can only reduce the emissions by 31%, right? And this is the ideal case. So, and the ideal case can never happen, right? So the GMP should actually be more focused on increasing the mitigations of the GMP actually. And so when we talk about the sectorial contributions, so the authors found out that 55% of the total methane emissions were coming from fossil fuels, and 27% from waste, and 16% from agriculture. So these are the sectors that need to be targeted first. And they also found out that the behavioral measures. So they said that if everyone can change their dietary shifts, and waste can be reduced, so this can actually reduce the methane emissions. And for global collaborations, so the authors found out that if GMP actually includes all the countries, not only GMP focused countries, they actually should include all the countries so that the whole world can take part in this GMP, and they can uh, contribute to this success. When we talk about the novelty and distinctive features of this research paper, we can clearly see that the authors studied so much about GMP, and they studied 476 methane focused mitigation actions from NDCs of 168 countries, so which is a lot. And they published their results, and they also recommended some of the actions that can be taken place. For example, they suggested that the fossil fuels, agriculture, and waste, which are the main methane emitters, we need to focus on them first, right? And they also suggested that some of the countries which are not in GMP, we should include them so that the whole world can work together, right? They also suggested some of the behavioral measures that we can shift our dietary approach, and we can also reduce the waste, and which will affect the methane emissions. So this is really unique, and this is really amazing. So, discussing the methodology of the research paper. So first, NDCs are the documents that were submitted by the countries as a part of Paris Agreement outlining their climate change mitigation plans, right? So the authors studied the 168 NDCs that were submitted of the countries that were a part of GMP, and they found out like the things that are already discussed, like the 55% emissions from fossil fuels, 27 by waste, and 16 by agriculture. So, and then they highlighted all the mistakes that were in GMP, and they also suggested some of the results that are already discussed. So this is the entire methodology of the research paper. When we talk about the reliability and the validity of the research paper, so in the lower screenshot, there is data availability statement. So when I went to the link of the data availability statement, so it opened the above screenshot, which is United Nations climate change, and it had all the NDCs that were actually studied by the authors. So and we can also study them, and we can verify. So the all the results of the research paper are verified, and they are actually pretty good. When we talk about the real world applications of this research paper, so we can clearly see that the authors pointed out all the mistakes that were in the GMP, because like they said that if every country is doing everything according to the GMP plan, they can only reduce the methane emissions by 31%, and this is the ideal case. So they suggested that we should consider the missed opportunities, right? For example, the behavioral things that we already discussed, and also include the non-GMP countries, so that we can actually mitigate methane emissions, right? And they also suggested other ways to to work around the methane emissions. For example, focus on the fossil fuels and the waste and agriculture sector first, because these are the highest contributors of methane emissions. To conclude, this research paper pointed out the mistakes in the GMP plan, and they also suggested that how can we actually address the problem, and we can actually reduce the methane emissions, right? And by reducing the methane emissions, we can actually slow down the global temperature increase, which is happening annually, to 1.5 degrees Celsius, so which is pretty good. That is all from my side. Thank you very much.